when you know yourself, when you know what you're good at, when you know what you're bad at, when you know what you love, when you know what you hate, and something comes to you, an offer of a project or people criticizing you for whatever reason, you know, that has nothing to do with who I am. It has nothing to do with what I want. It doesn't mesh with my values. I'm not interested in this project because it's not me, right? So it gives you a sense of priorities. This is what matters. This is what doesn't matter.
Robert, thank you for coming on the podcast today. Really honored and humbled for you to be here, especially since your work has impacted my life, and really excited to talk to you today.
Well, thanks for having me, Danny. My pleasure.
I'd love to start with your intuitive connection to ancient Greece and 17th century France.
Oh, wow.
Why why are those two periods pull you in and draw you closer to them when you've studied them?
Well, it's a great question. So when I was my major in college was classics, and particularly ancient Greek. So I studied the language, and I don't know. It's a very strange major to choose. Probably the most impractical thing you could ever get a degree in is classics, and I just something drew me to it. And ever since I was a kid, I was sort of really had a deep attraction to the culture, to the literature, to the history, to all of the great writers from those times. You can't really explain something like that. It's just this connection where, you feel like you're on the same, you kind of understand it on a deep level. I mean, if I got weird and mystical, I could almost say like maybe I had a past life in ancient Greece. Maybe I was Pericles or something. But the moment I started studying ancient Greek, I had a feel for it that was weird. I was at Berkeley, going to college at Berkeley at the time, and I took this course where you crammed 1 year of ancient Greek into 6 weeks. So you were like doing 8 hours of ancient Greek every day, and then you had an exam at the end of every day and a major exam at the end of every week. I was thinking and dreaming in ancient Greek, and it was just the most amazing experience. And then ever since then, like I know when I was writing the war book, I think if I remember correctly, I was writing something about Athena, who's kind of, I dedicated the book to her. She's sort of the icon for the book, the goddess Athena. And I wrote something without ever looking it up, just out of the top of my head about her. And I go, wait, Robert, how do you know this is true? And then I went back and I looked, and sure enough, what I wrote was incredibly accurate. And it made me feel like I do have this sort of strange feel and this strange connection to it. I'm very attracted to ancient cultures, to the way they think, to how different they are from our way of thinking, which is always very appealing to me. But there's something particular about ancient Greece and the rationality of it and the kind of the beauty of the combination of these strange myths with these very rational people who are kind of the creators of our world today. You and I wouldn't be talking the way we talk if it wasn't for the foundation of philosophy and rationality that came in ancient Greece. So that connection is just deeply profound, and I can't almost even explain it. As far as 17th century France, I read a lot of the history there, and I've studied it very deeply. I speak French, and I read a lot in French. And it's a similar thing to ancient Greece, where the kind of the court life, the kind of mannerism, the artificiality of it seemed very interesting to me, because I see when the metaphor that I created for the 48 laws of power was the court, the aristocratic court. And so I make the point that when you're in an office today, or you look at the news and you read about Elon Musk or Joe Biden or Trump, these people are surrounded by a court of sycophants, basically, of people who tell them what they want to hear. Whenever you work in an office, you'll see the boss he or she creates a kind of court around themselves. And the metaphor of these people living in the Palace of Versailles and all trying to toady up to King Louis XIV and get on his best side and be clever and witty and try and get rid of their rivals, in very manipulative ways, I thought was so modern and so exactly my experience. But these people are wearing powdered wigs and they're dressed in these strange outfits. But it's so much my experience of the work world. And the stories of, I like stories in history that have kind of a mythic quality to them, which is what I was attracted to in the figure of Napoleon Bonaparte. But also the whole era of King Louis XIV has this kind of larger than life theatrical quality that lends itself very well to using it in things like the 48 Laws of Power.
When you describe the powers that be, you talking about Elon Musk and Donald Trump and them creating a court around them, it is in a sense because they have power, right? Because they have a role that is esteemed, that it looks like they're kings of modern day. I'm curious, how have you, as you've gained power, not allowed that same thing to happen to you where you are surrounded by a court of people that you are not giving you the truth?
Well, first of all, I'm a writer and I don't have a court of people. I have one person working for me who manages my social media. My problem is I like to control things. So it's probably a weakness and a strength of mine. I'm kind of a control freak. And if I have too many people working for me, all kinds of politics intervening, I feel like I lose control a bit, which is why I did not like working in Hollywood. I tried writing in Hollywood, and a writer has no power. You're surrounded, four other writers are brought in, etc. I like having control. So I don't have a court, but I do have a lot of people, praising me on the internet, on, comments or getting emails, et cetera, or podcasters like yourself. And my thing is, from a very early age, I never thought I was really very good at anything, to be honest with you. I had a kind of, not low self-esteem, but I just felt like I was never quite good enough. Like my grades weren't good enough. Like the paper I wrote wasn't, there was something wrong about it. And I've internalized that negative voice in my head ever since. So I wrote the 48 Laws of Power and the book was successful, but it didn't go to my head because I felt like maybe I didn't really deserve the success. My next book has to be even better. I can't rest on my laurels. So I have this sort of negative voice in me, which is a good thing and is a bad thing. It can get to be bad, but it has a positive aspect, which means I'm very self-critical. So if people are praising me, sometimes it doesn't feel very real, If they make a very specific comment, like this is what I think you're good at, or you said, maybe then, but a lot of times it doesn't feel very real to me. And there's that voice that constantly props up in my head where you don't really deserve it, Robert. You have to be better. You're not as good as you think. Maybe it's a little bit of that imposter syndrome, etc. But I think it was Julius Caesar, had a slave or somebody like that walk around with him and constantly whisper into his ear, Julius, you are mortal, you are mortal, you are not a god. I don't remember if it was him or Augustus. I've kind of have that little voice in my head saying, Robert, you're not that great, you're not as good as you think you are, and it kind of keeps me from having that kind of court dynamic that you mentioned.
Whose voice is that? Obviously, you are identifying it as your voice now, but whose voice put that there for you?
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of the superego of Freud, but basically, the superego is the kind of voice that you get from your parents and from society that kind of civilizes you and makes sure that you don't run rampant and just do whatever you want. It's probably the voice of my parents, to be honest with you, they were proud of me. I got straight A's in high school and college, but there was never quite enough. I was always that, it wasn't really that great or what's next, Robert, kind of thing. I think it comes from my parents, to be honest with you. And do you wish that voice disappeared, or are you grateful for it?
And do you wish that that voice disappeared, or are you grateful for it? And do you wish that that voice disappeared, or are you grateful for it? at this point in your life?
I think I'm grateful for it. First of all, I have a philosophy in life which is related to the idea of amor fati, which you might have heard from me. I don't regret anything. I don't think anything is bad that has happened to me. Everything that happened to me, even the worst stuff, even the stroke that I suffered a couple of years ago, happens for a reason, and it makes me a better person in some way. So first of all, I never regret anything. But the other thing is, a lot of people, they write a book or they write a song, like a hip hop artist or whatever, and they have success, and they're never able to follow up on it because they don't analyze, they're not self-critical enough. They think they can just repeat the same thing over and over again. They start believing in the myth of their own greatness, right? I never had that. I've never had that. And so it makes me, each time I start a project or a book, I'm back at square one. I'm back where I was before the 48 Laws of Power, living in a one-bedroom apartment in Santa Monica with no success, no power at all. It could all evaporate tomorrow. It keeps an edge in me that makes me always want to make the next book even better. So I don't wish it ever disappeared. Sometimes, though, I get a little too hard on myself, and it's good for me to step back and go, look what you've achieved. You're by yourself with really, I mean, I've had people who've helped me a lot. I can't deny that, but really on your own, you've created these books that are so different and weird. I have to sometimes step back and give myself a little pat on the back, which I don't do often enough. So that would be the only kind of downside to it.
Well, you deserve that pat on the back and then some, and maybe scheduling in some time once a month to give yourself
No,
that
I don't deserve
because
it.
of
I'm just kidding.
I love that. That's hilarious. One of the things that you've mentioned before is that you obsess over things that aren't important. And one of my friends, Zach Pogrob, talks about the importance of obsession in order to chase and have what you want. But the problem is when it becomes things that aren't important, how do you differentiate between the things that are important and the things that aren't? And how do you catch yourself when you find yourself obsessing over things that aren't important?
Well, this is another really good question. I mean, first of all, I have the way to differentiate these things is to have a lot of self-awareness. Now, I have to explain what I mean by that, but a lot of people don't have self-awareness. They're too much involved in what other people think about them. They're too engaged in social media. They don't think about themselves. They don't know themselves on any deep level. I mean, the source of wisdom, according to the ancient Greeks and Socrates, was know thyself, which is the inscription on the top of the Temple of Delphi. When you know yourself, when you know what you're good at, when you know what you're bad at, when you know what you love, when you know what you hate, and something comes to you, an offer of a project or people criticizing you for whatever reason, that has nothing to do with who I am. There's nothing to do with what I want. It doesn't mesh with my values. I'm not interested in this project because it's not me, right? So it gives you a sense of priorities. This is what matters. This is what doesn't matter. Now, that said, I'm human and things get to me and bother me and get under my skin, and I think about them and think about them and think about them like anybody does. The one thing that saves me from that is, talked about this before, is my practice of meditation. So every morning, it's a form of Zen meditation. I sit on these pillows every morning religiously, no matter if I'm sick or whatever. And for 35, 40, 45 minutes, I meditate. And during that time where you have no sounds, you're completely alone. You're just by yourself. Thoughts keep popping up, and you become very much aware of those obsessional thoughts that can take control of you, that are often very negative, like, why did that person not respond to my email? What's wrong with me? Why did, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all the little petty things that get to you. And as you meditate on them, you go, Robert, why are you thinking about these things? Why are they important to you? They're not important, right? They're stupid. They're meaningless. You're going to die tomorrow. You could very easily be dead tomorrow. Do you want to have your last moments on earth thinking about why this idiotic person said some negative comment about you, or why they're not responding to you, or why this isn't happening or that happening? No, it's not important. So those two things, being extremely self-aware of what I want, what I don't want, and then going through that process of meditating and being aware of how petty things in the end don't matter, I think that's what sort of saves me from those kind of negative obsessions, which I do have, but I think I'm able to manage.
Why do you do it religiously? What about it being an everyday practice makes it so important?
Well, I have a compulsive part of my character, which is I like doing things every day, and if I don't, like I used to be a compulsive exercise exercise freak, which I still am, but since my stroke, it's kind of I have had to sort of adapt it. I'm a compulsive person, and I like doing things over and over again. Like I like the ritual, the comfort of it. But when you start, I've been doing the meditation, quote unquote, religiously now for it'll be 13 years in August because I've kind of written down the date. Um, Once you've been doing it for like a year, right? And then some reason you miss a day, and I've had to miss a day, like for various reasons. Um,
I won't tell anyone, Robert.
all right, don't tell anyone, please. Well, when I do miss a day, I try and double up the next day. But anyway, when I do miss a day, I go, "Oh, I don't feel right. It doesn't feel good." It's like not taking a shower in the morning. You feel kind of dirty or you didn't brush your teeth. It doesn't feel good. And so the meditation kind of grounds me. And when I don't do it, I feel off. I feel like imbalanced. I feel like something isn't right in the universe. And I don't like that feeling. So that's why I do it compulsively. But when you do something over and over and over again, like a habit, it can go one of two ways. It could become kind of mechanical and just something that you do without really knowing why you do it, which is not what I ever want it to be. I want it to be something that I control, that has variety to it, that I'm the master of. So I never feel like the meditation is something that's just mechanical. And that's why I chose, if anybody's considering meditation out there, I know a lot of people who do it, and then they end up kind of giving up, or it sort of loses its effect. And that's because it's too specific. It's too like telling you exactly what to meditate on. It's giving you these concrete ideas. And after a year or two, it wears off and you get bored, etc. With this form of meditation, there's nothing. You're meditating on emptiness, on nothingness. You're trying to empty the mind. You're trying to enter a different way of being and thinking and relating to the world. So no 2 days are ever the same. Every day is a surprise. This morning when I was meditating, I was having thoughts that I've never had before. So each day is like a surprise. Some days aren't quite as good as others, but usually it's a kind of a journey where anything is never quite the same, and that's what keeps me going in it.
Has meditation made you more creative?
I think so. Because it gives you access to parts of your unconscious that you normally don't have. So, you've noticed like at night when you dream, weird things start coming up into your brain, right? Things, that if you wake up, they're kind of shocking. You behaved in a way that you would never behave in normal life. You have ideas, you have encounters with women or whatever that are like, whoa, that was weird, that was strange. That's your unconscious. Things are coming up from underneath, things that you've repressed. They're leaking through into your brain and into your dreams when you don't have control. When you meditate, it's not like you're dreaming, but things start bubbling up from your unconscious because you're trying to empty the mind and you're trying to get rid of the conscious patterns of thinking. And strange things start emerging, things you never thought of before, things from your childhood, interpretations of reality that you had never imagined before. It kind of opens your mind up. And so the metaphor that they create in Zen meditation that I think is really beautiful is that the mind is like an empty sky, a blue empty sky here, like we have in Los Angeles. Usually, sometimes it's cloudy, but usually it's brilliant blue. That's what a true liberated mind is like. No hindrances, nothing is ever the same. It's just this immense emptiness, and it feels like really wonderful. And when you have that kind of openness about your mind, where so the other metaphor that they use, that there's a great Zen samurai philosopher named Ta Kuan, who compared the mind to a gourd in a river. You know what a dried gourd is? A
No, I
gourd
don't.
is like a is like a squash or some. I can't remember what kind of fruit, but when it dries, it turns into this hard wooden kind of circular globe thing. And he compares the mind to a gourd on a river, where it's continually moving and it's continually circling around. It's never static. And that's how the ideal mind is. It's never still, it's continual motion. And when you get that through the meditation, then you never have fixed ideas. Your mind is fluid, it's free. And that's to me the essence of being creative. So yeah, I think it does feed into that very much.
That's very beautiful. I've been meditating for the past 4 years. It's changed my life because it gave me the ability to go inward for the first time. But a lot of people will come to me and they'll be like, I don't want to start meditating because I'm scared I'm going to be less ambitious. Have you found that to be the case?
I don't understand that at all. I mean, first of all,
But people will tell you the same thing, right? They'll say, I don't want to lose my desires for this world, is what people will tell me.
well, that's not what meditation is about, or what it is not what it's supposed to be about. It's not like connecting you to some kind of spirit. You're not going to become a Mahatma Gandhi, kind of, renouncing the worldly pleasures, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what meditation is about. But ambition is something where, people have these weird concepts about life. They get it in their head. What is ambition? All right. Ambition by itself isn't necessarily a great thing. It has to be ambition for something, right? And I could be personally ambitious to make $1 billion, me, Robert Greene, but it's not a value that's important to me, right? Whereas it would be important to someone like an Elon Musk or whomever. It's not me. So if I had that ambition, it would kind of suck the soul out of me. It wouldn't be who I would. It wouldn't be a connection. It would kind of empty me of who it would really, as I said, suck the soul out of me because it's not who I am. So your ambition has to connect to something deep inside of you. It has to be who you are, right? Whether it's to create a great film, whether it's to have a great podcast, whether it's to have a wonderful family and raise wonderful kids, etc. Those are ambitions that connect to who you are. That's what meditation does. So if you go around thinking, well, I just need to be ambitious, I need to have a lot of energy, I want to get things done, I want to build things, but you know what's going to happen to you? You'll be 36 years old and you'll be running on that, and it starts losing its meaning. You don't really know why you're doing these things you do. You start you lose your focus. You start maybe drinking or taking some drugs. You start having affairs and doing kind of compulsive behavior that's not positive because it's not connected to who you are. And I said meditation brings you self-awareness, which is the key to power, to success, to fulfillment in life. And so you can't just think, oh, I just got to be ambitious. What are you ambitious for? And a lot of people don't know who they are. They don't know themselves. They don't know what they're good at, what they're bad at, what they really love. And so that's sort of the point of meditation. So, people who say things like that are severely deluded.
I happen to agree with you. You mentioned that in August, it'll be 13 years since you started meditating. And I'm curious if there was what was the precursor to beginning? Was there any major event that caused you to start your meditation journey, and why is it so impactful that you remember the date so clearly?
Well, it was very easy to remember because it was the year 2010, so I can always date it from that. Easy number to remember. And I remember very distinctly about I was going to visit my sister in Oregon about when it happened, and I knew that was in mid-August. Um, but the kind of books that I write can be very, very stressful. And I'm not trying to complain or whine or get sympathy. It's just reading a lot of books, thinking very deeply about the subject matter, has taken a physical toll on me, which is probably what eventually led to my stroke. But even back then, I remember I finished the War book in, I think, 2005, 2006, 2005. I felt like I was going to die. I was so exhausted. I was so drained. Something was wrong. It wasn't a good feeling. And I've had that often when I finish projects. So I took up meditation essentially to save my life. I figured I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm going to die unless I start finding ways to calm myself down, finding ways to get outside of myself, finding ways to not be so intense about my work and just find a way to kind of relax me in a way and make me feel more comfortable in my body. So it was more like a survival thing. If I don't do this, bad things are going to happen. And also to write the books I do require a tremendous amount of focus because every day I'm focusing on the same thing and I go deeper and deeper into it. And I needed the meditation to kind of, as you get older, your mind becomes more distracted. Very much so. It falls into all sorts of little pieces as you've got all these memories, experiences, things happening. I needed something to help me with my focus so I could write better. So that's pretty much why I started that time.
Yeah, and one other thing that meditation helps with is the ability to sit with boredom. And you've said before that the dividing line between success and failure is the ability to sit with boredom.
Yeah.
What can we do to become better at sitting with boredom other than meditation? And why is boredom so important?
Well, it's how the human brain operates. I mean, we have certain strengths, the way the human brain is developed, and we have certain weaknesses. And when the brain focuses on something deeply and gets into it day after day after day after day, and that a lot of that requires repetition, you're engaging the muscle of the brain in the deepest way, and you're developing something very, very powerful, right? And that requires habits. So if you take a simple metaphor that people could understand, if you've ever played a musical instrument like the piano, or if you've ever played a sport like basketball, when you start off, you have no skill, you have no talent, right? It's very frustrating. You see people who are really great at it. I can't even do that. And your first impulse is to give up. But if you start doing it, if you start practicing the piano, if you start, jump shots and working on your jumping ability and things like that. I remember when I was in 14, I wanted to be a basketball player and, white guys can't jump kind of thing. I got these ankle weights, and I was like trying to walk around with ankle weights so that I could, jump better kind of thing. So when you do something like that, day after day after day, 1 week later, 1 month later, it's boring, right? Shooting free throws, 1,000 free throws, playing scales on the piano. Nobody in the world can tell you that's not boring. But when you do it and you push past the boredom, magical things happen because you're working with the muscle of the brain in the way it was designed for. So suddenly, I've been practicing scales for 6 months now. I'm able to play this piece that's really interesting and it's fun, right? Or I'm able to get on a basketball court and people pick me to be on their team because I'm getting pretty good. It's fun. Now I've got to elevate my game even further. I have to get even better to make it even more fun. I have to practice and practice and practice. 7 years down the line, you're Kobe Bryant, you're Mozart, you're Albert Einstein. Things become incredible. but you have to go through the tedium. You have to go through the boredom. So everybody knows it's a very easy, common metaphor. When you want to build body strength, right? You do resistance training. You use weights or bands or whatever, right? And it's resistance. If it were easy, you wouldn't build any body strength, right? The resistance is what makes you strong. Boredom is resistance. It's a resistance. It's like a weight. You push against it, and it makes you stronger and stronger and stronger. It makes your brain stronger. It makes your body stronger. It makes your whole spirit stronger. Adversity is another resistance that makes you stronger and better. But boredom is probably something that we all deal with every single day. And if your reaction to boredom is, I can't deal with it, I can't deal with that resistance, I've got to like play video games, I've got to get on online porn, I've got to do this or the other, I've got to distract myself, etc., then that muscle doesn't develop. And you're just getting weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And it becomes harder and harder to deal with boredom. It becomes harder and harder to deal with any kind of resistance factor. And that's why a lot of people fail in life, You can't just practice anything, which is why I wrote the book Mastery. It's not like I could go practice like ice skating every day because I'm not good at it. I don't love it and I don't want to be good at it. And if I practiced it 2 years, I might get pretty good at it, but I wouldn't love it, so it wouldn't lead anywhere. So the habit that pushing against boredom, those rituals, those things that you do like the piano, that's something that you love that connects to you, which comes back to our idea of self-awareness. So in Mastery, I talk about discovering your life's task, what you were meant to do, what you love, and then you pushed. That will help you get past the boredom aspect.
Yeah, I read Mastery almost directly before starting this podcast. And if I were to think about my life's purpose or the thing that I'm devoting my life to, it is this podcast. So it makes a lot of sense. On the topic of boredom as well, J. Cole once recently said in an interview about how the thing you love, you're not going to love all the time, right? Some days you're going to love rapping as for him, but other days he's not going to like it, but he still has to do it on the days that he doesn't like it because that is the resistance, and resistance and boredom being closely aligned is something I've really never considered before. That leads me to ask for you, which parts of writing are the most exciting and which parts of writing are the most boring?
Well, you can't really give in to that kind of dichotomy or it'll kill you. So right now I'm writing a story for my new book, and it's a bitch of a story to get out because it's something that goes in history that's very controversial that people don't really know what it means. So I did tons of research. I over-researched it, right? And now I've got to put together these 7 dense books and create a story that readers are going to enjoy. It's hard, man. It's hard work. And so every day I'm at it, but the challenge is interesting. It's not exciting. It's a challenge. But I feel at the end of the day, I'm getting there. I'm pushing against that resistance. The wall is bending a little bit. I'm getting closer to what I want. So that day-to-day grind isn't fun, but it's not tedious. It's just a challenge. Can I do it? Can I get better at it? And then once I have the story out and it starts to look, well, Robert, you're 60% there, 50% there. Well, now it's fun. Now I get to like fix it up and dress it up and make it more exciting. It's kind of fun. And then the story is finished. And then I go on to the rest of the chapter. And then I come back to it and I make it even better. And then I send it off to New York and they love it. It's like, it's the closest thing to like a mental orgasm. Like, it's great, man. That's where you have the fun. It's not like every day is exciting and wonderful. It's not like every day is horrible and tedious. It's just building patiently. And then when you get there, it's a great feeling that you've accomplished something. You pushed against all of these obstacles and you created something. So that's sort of the process I go through.
What do you think most writers in their 20s today are getting wrong?
Well, I don't know a lot of writers in their in their 20s. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, Ryan Holiday would be the closest. He's in his 30s and he doesn't get anything wrong. So I can't use him as an example. But I do get people with proposals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One thing I can say that people will probably think is they're not going to like to hear, but when I get some people send me like a proposal or an idea, and the punctuation is all wrong, and the spelling is all wrong, and the grammar sucks, I don't like it. I don't want to read it. You don't have the discipline to learn the basics of language. How are you going to be able to write a book? Yeah, there's some people who are geniuses who don't know how to spell well. Okay, all right. And if you're a genius and I see that, I might overlook it. But it really grates me if you haven't learned the basics of writing. And the problem with a lot of young people, I even had it when I was young, is you think, well, you learn music, you have to learn the language of music, and it's not natural. But words, I learned when I was a baby. I don't need to learn how to write because I can write. I just write. I write emails. I write texts. I write things like that. It's not people don't think of it as a skill, right?
Hmm.
It's a skill like anything else. It's like when I'm writing a book, the image that comes into mind is I'm building a cathedral. Brick by brick by brick by brick, the mortar, it's all kind of fitting together the pieces. I have to create a foundation. It's a skill, it's difficult. And if I don't build it well, the whole facade will collapse. People will get killed. It'll be a disaster. It's just a metaphor. So it's a skill. And so a lot of young people don't understand that. They think, I can just write. I have a great idea. I have a great idea for a book. I'll just write it down and Robert will love it. I might love it, but you have to realize it's not easy. It's not something you can just wake up and fall out of your bed and come up with a great idea or write something interesting. It takes discipline, it takes work, it takes practice. Okay? That's the one thing that's, I think, is the main obstacle to get a lot of young people. The other thing is, writing is not about your ego. It's not about how wonderful you are, how great you are, and how many wonderful ideas you are, and what a nice, good, moral person you are. Writing is communication. It's not about you. It's about communicating to other people. It's not internal, it's external. It's about connecting to the world, connecting to the billions of people around the planet who are alive, all alive at the same time, right? So when you have that idea in your head that it's not about me, it's about communicating to people, it changes your whole way of looking at it. And you now, so a lot of people, bad writing to me, I can smell it right away. There's ego involved, there's narcissism. People have a pretty phrase. Oh, that's kind of fun. It's an interesting pun, but it's not communicating anything. It's just like whipped cream on a cake. It's not real. It's like, extra calories are going to make you feel sick at the end. Communication is reality. You're communicating something real, something true. It's not about clever little phrases and making yourself look good. It's about hitting something real and communicating it to other people. That's what makes a good writer, and that's what takes a lot of practice. And I think a lot of young people, it takes time to develop and understand that, and maybe that's something that's missing. I know I probably missed that when I was in my 20s too.
One of the things that seems so strong in so much of your life is empathy. And you can sense when you're talking about writing, it's like having empathy for the reader. You described yourself, I believe, as a rake when you're seducing women back in the day, and how what made you so successful at that in your younger days was that you were able to have empathy for the woman you were talking to. And how do you believe you've gone about developing that empathy?
Well, it is something you can develop for sure, because we're all born with that capacity. I know, and we have to be honest, that people who have certain neurological dysfunctions, or not dysfunctions, they're different, they're divergent, which is how we think about it now, like autism or Asperger's, where that kind of empathy doesn't come as naturally to them. And they have to give extra effort to learn it. And some people have, and it's a brilliant thing. So you can't say every human on the planet has it, but most of us are born with this ability to get in the minds of other people. So it's like something that's latent in you, right? You have it, but you have to develop it. You have to build on it. It doesn't. You can't just like the writing. You just can't fall out of bed and be naturally empathetic. It's something that you have to be aware of and you have to develop. And I talk about that in the Laws of Human Nature, where I say you turn your narcissism, your love of yourself, which we all have, and you kind of invert it and make it and direct it towards other people. So you're more interested in other people than in yourself. And I give you tips on how to get to that point. But as for me personally, I think the nature of my own childhood, where I was kind of left alone, and I kind of had to, I felt a little bit vulnerable to people. Um, my sense of protection came because children are very vulnerable, very weak, and it can be very dangerous. It's what cripples a lot of people at a very early age. They never get over that feeling of vulnerability, and they create a shell around them, and it kind of ruins them emotionally and developmentally. So for me, it was understanding the people around me. That was my way of protecting myself. What is this person, this adult thinking? What's going on in their head? What is their world like? What is this other friend of mine or this other student of mine in kindergarten or wherever? What's going on in their head? Now, I can't remember exactly that process going on. I'd be, that'd be creating a myth, but I kind of must have been doing something like that because it was something that I was doing from a very early age. And so my first instinct, and it's a form of self-protection. Doesn't come from necessarily a strong place. It comes from a weak place. But there's a great psychologist who was sort of a disciple of Freud and later a kind of an opponent of his named Alfred Adler, who had this theory of compensation. And he says that a lot of people who develop brilliant minds or who develop really great at sports or whatever, it begins from a place of weakness. And they have to compensate for something they perceive in their childhood that they're not good at, and they get really good at it, and that makes them very powerful. So my empathy came from that place of weakness, but it's what made me want to be a writer, because writing is getting inside the worlds of other people. That's what makes good writing, right? So since I developed that muscle when I was 6, 7 years old, and now I'm 13 and I'm reading novels, I'm going, wow, these characters. That's so interesting to get inside the world create a character in a novel, in literature. And that means the writer is getting inside their spirit. How exciting. That's what I want to do. So it kind of triggered that desire. And so once I developed that from that early age, it just blossoms throughout my life. So I'm practicing it continually, and that's the key for anybody. So you don't want to have just empathy for your cat, your dog, your mother, your father, your boyfriend, your girlfriend. You want it for everyone. Because it's easy to you're trying to seduce a woman. It's very easy to try and get into her. It's not easy, but it's very more natural to get into their spirit. But when you're shopping at a supermarket and there's some person behind the counter who's cutting your meat for you, having empathy for that person, that's not easy. Practice that every single day. Try and put yourself, what are they thinking? What is their world like? Why do they dress that way? What's going on in their head? What could, you can't read people's minds. That's impossible. But you can read their moods, their emotions, and that's what we're very good at. So you can pick up signals that this person who's behind the counter giving you your salmon or whatever, they're not connecting to you. They're in a bad mood. All right, well, maybe I can cheer them up or something. Just get inside people's emotions and practice it every single day with people that aren't who you normally would. Even people that you would normally go, oh, I don't want to know them. It's a very valuable skill. So let's say later in life you have a job and you have a horrible boss. And believe me, I've had some of the most horrible bosses in the history of mankind. So I speak from experience. That ability to like, what is their thinking? Why are the narcissist? Why are they so toxic? What that does is it doesn't make it personal anymore. It means they're not being mean because they hate me. They're being mean because they had a bitch of a childhood. They're miserable. They're not happy with themselves. I can understand it. It doesn't make me love them, but it doesn't make me take things personally. These are very valuable life skills to develop.
You mentioned that you were 6 years old in your own world, and then at 13, you're reading novels for the first time. And I'm curious, at what age or what moment did you realize you were an incredible writer or you had potential as a writer?
I never thought I was an incredible writer, but I thought I was something that, was a good fit for me.
Hmm.
Probably in high school when I started writing more like essays, things that were longer. And I got, I had my English teacher was giving us, things essays we had to write about books that we were reading. I felt like it was a good fit there. And I started realizing, this could be something that's, I was intended for. It was part of my destiny, if you will. And so the idea grew in my head. When you're younger, you have dreams, you have ideals, right? Everybody has them. I'm going to be Michael Jordan. I'm going to be, Winston Churchill, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So I had these ideals of, I'm going to be the next Ernest Hemingway or whatever like that. And there's a ridiculous side to it, but it also kind of fuels you. It makes you ambitious. It makes you dream. And the dream, even through my late teens, my 20s, my early 30s, when things were crushing me, where I wasn't successful, I wasn't making anything really work, the dream was still there. And it made it so I never gave up. So I was frustrated, but I was like, okay, someday you're going to make this happen. And it didn't happen until I was in my very late 30s. But it was probably in high school that I realized this was something that I was good at.
How did you keep the dream alive in the days that it wasn't working?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's because it was very strong. Um, you know, um, I talk about it in Mastery, something I'm going to go into a little bit in my next book, where something is talking to you. And I mentioned this in your life's task, right? And it seems like a weird mystical thing I'm describing, but it's not at all. And I can explain it in very rational scientific terms. But I experience it as somebody is telling me that I'm good at words, that I'm good at writing. This is and it turns into like a voice inside of your head saying, this is what you were meant to do, kind of thing. And if that gets strong enough, nothing will distract you. So even in your worst moments of depression, you know that I'm good at this. It's something I was meant to be. Now, where does that come from? Well, each one of us is born unique. We have a DNA that will never be reproduced in the past or in the future. There's something marked in our genetic code that is never will ever happen again. Okay, and that's an amazing thought if you really ponder it. So each person has that, and to take it even further, nobody has the same parents, nobody has the same experiences when they're 1, 2 years old. So you are something completely irrevocably unique, never happened before. Okay, all right. So when that uniqueness of you, and you feel it, you understand it, you hear it, okay, that is your destiny. That is that voice in your head. And it's a biological imprint of what makes you different from everybody else. The people who hear that distinctly, very clearly from an early age, are the ones that end up having the most power and success in life. Some people, is kind of foggy, and they never clear it up, and they go through life wandering, and it's not good. Other people, it's kind of foggy, and then when they're 18 or 25, it starts clearing up, and it's not too late, and great things will happen for them. And then there are other people who never even have any notion of it, of what it is, of what that voice is. But because I had it where it was very strong, you know, even in the worst moments where, I'm like 35, 36, and I'm still struggling in Hollywood and I hate it and I don't like the writing. There's something else I can do. I can try some other form of writing. It's now, if this had continued, if I had not met this man who ended up packaging the 48 and producing the 48 Laws of Power, and I went into my mid 40s and late 40s with this, I don't know what would have happened to me. But so I can't say. But at that point in my late 30s, I hadn't yet given up. So that's kind of what kept me going.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because you've written books that have helped so many people, and you have helped so many people, and then they come to you with questions about their own life, about what should I do in this situation, Robert? You have almost become a therapist for people on some of these podcasts that I'm listening to prepare for our conversation. Does their problems or people's problems ever impact you or stay on you the way that therapists sometimes have, or feel like I'm living with other people's problems because I'm helping people?
Well, yes, that I have that tendency, and that could be a problem. But unfortunately, because of getting older and because of so many people writing me now, I don't have time. And whereas in the past, like 15 years ago, I would take these emails, which didn't happen as often, and I would respond and exchange and go into it. I don't have the time anymore. It's unfortunate. So I don't really have that experience as much. But what happens to me is people write with often very painful stories. And I do think about it, and it makes me feel awful that I can't really do anything for them at this particular moment, because I just can't like spend days and days and days interacting with them. Number one, I can't type anymore because of my stroke in my left hand, so I have to dictate everything, and it's a miserable process. So it's hard for me to do. It's much harder for me now, and so if I were a therapist, or if I did have the time, the empathy level can be an actual problem where you're feeling people's stories too deeply, and it's entering your own mental space, and it's bringing you down, or it's whatever. So I don't really have that problem at this point, though, I must say.
That makes sense, that there's a layer between you and the people. How has your definition of success changed as you've gone on throughout your life?
Well, to me, everything kind of, you learn from everything that happens to you in life. So what I had when I was 39, when the 48 Laws of Power came out, is not where I'm at now. And so to me, the idea of success that I have now is freedom. So I'm extremely fortunate, and I have to wake up and I have to realize that and understand it, that I have the freedom as a writer that 99% of the other writers out there simply don't have. My publisher, I can write whatever I want. They don't bother me. They don't try and change it. You know, I don't have to get a teaching job to keep, pay my bills, etc. The freedom is unbelievable that I have. With it comes responsibility. I have to I have to be disciplined. I have to motivate myself. I can't just sit there and sit in my chair and just kind of, read about the Lakers all day or whatever. I got to work. I got to be disciplined. Okay, so there's a responsibility that comes with it. But for me, success and power is that feeling of freedom. I don't have any bosses. I don't have any people breathing down my neck. I don't have anybody telling me what I have to do or what I have to write. I don't have anybody canceling me or saying you can't write about this or that. I'm the luckiest man on the planet. To me, that is a notion of success that I maybe didn't understand when I was 39, that now I understand and I'm extremely, extremely grateful for.
Wow. That that is really impactful. When you think about, you mentioned your stroke a few times in this, and this was 5 years ago now, and I assume that your the way you view death changed because of it. If that is true, how did it change? How did your view of death change as you went through what you went through?
Well, your concept of death naturally changes as you get older. So when you're in your 20s, doesn't seem very real at all, right?
Hmm.
I've got vistas of time ahead of me. I'm going to, you never think of it. You've got like 60, 70 years ahead. Well, why think about dying? And as you get older and friends around you died, and I've had a few friends, close friends die, and I had my father die, it starts becoming more real, more visceral, more present in your life. And then you get in your 50s and you get in your early 60s, and you go, I don't have all the time left in the world. And, it could happen tomorrow. Okay, so it becomes present in your head just as you age for every single human being. But when I had the stroke, it was like, here I am. I thought I was very healthy, and I was very healthy. I exercised every day. I was swimming long distances. I was hiking. I was mountain biking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then, so I had a little bit of that illusion that one has in their 20s, and then it's suddenly ripped away from me. And I'm in a coma, and then I come out of it, and suddenly death is like staring me in the face. Like I came this close to it happening. And it's not an idea, it's not a thought, it's something in your body that you feel. You feel the closeness of it. You feel it viscerally. You feel it in your bones, in your skin. And that moment of being unconscious, of passing out, and then waking up and, wow, I'm alive. What just happened to me? It alters the whole relationship that you have to life and to death. So now I'm extremely aware that it could happen any day again with me. And if I hadn't been, I was driving at the time. If my girlfriend, now my wife, hadn't been there, I would be dead. So the margin of being alive is very slim, and people don't realize that because could happen to you when you're in your 20s as well. But it makes it extremely real. It makes it in your face. It eliminates that kind of vagueness that we all have because we don't want to confront the thought. And it makes it physical, which is very different from being intellectual, right? So when I look out the window and I feel like, oh, I'm alive. Robert, you're alive. You see the birds are chirping. It's not a thought. It's like a reality. It's like something inside me because I know that it could be taken away tomorrow. And so I think that's the main difference from before and after.
What do you change? Understood. Yeah. What do you change about your life after the coma?
Well, I didn't have a choice. I mean, I lost I lost all the not the feeling, but my left side of my body was essentially paralyzed. Not paralyzed, but it had incredibly weak. Because what happens is, just not to get too technical, but you get a brain clot. I mean, a blood clot, I'm sorry. Blood stops flowing to your brain. And in those few minutes that it's happening, parts of your brain are damaged. And so for me, the blood clot was on affected the right side of my brain, which affects the left side of your body. Okay? So what's happening is you don't realize it, but your brain is what allows your body to move, right? You're never having to think about that. But when a part of your brain is damaged, it's not signaling, you're not picking up signals. So the left side of my body isn't getting signals from the brain, so it doesn't know what to do. It can't act. And it's not like it becomes weak. It's just, it's not connecting to your brain. So your left side of your body is like disconnected. It's like a dead piece of limb there. So I'm forced now to confront this very real physical limitation. And so to deal with that, I have to become extremely patient because I can't walk. I can't go out and take a walk. I can't go travel to Paris and do what I used to do and walk around the whole city. I can't really swim anymore. I can't do the things that I love. You can get very depressed. You can get suicidal. So you have to develop internal skills. You have to develop different ways of relating to the world, different ways of thinking. You have to develop patience that you never had before. And it's forced on you. So you either develop it or you go under, get rich or die trying. You either get it or you don't. So I've had moments where I wanted to give up, where I felt, I can't do this anymore. You're like, when you go to the gym and you try and gain strength, after a week of doing certain exercise, you start feeling it in your body. I could do an exercise for 3 months to try and get back my left side, and I won't feel a thing, no progress at all, because it's in the brain. It's not muscles, it's not strength. There's no signal going on. So you have to retrain those signals. You have to get those signals working again. And there's nothing in life that trains you, prepares you for that, unless you get a really great therapist, which I now have. So you're in waters that you never experienced before, and you have to learn how to swim in those waters, or bad things will happen. And so it was kind of forced on me, the need to adapt to this new world.
Why did you have your wife sew the shirt that you had when you went through the accident? Why was that so impactful for you and so important?
Well, so I was wearing this plaid shirt that I had just gotten for my birthday like 2 months before. And I love this shirt because I like kind of plaids, I have to admit. And it was my favorite shirt. And then that's when I had the stroke. And when I'm in a coma, the paramedics come and they don't have time to unbutton my shirt and get it off. They're like, you're going to die, man. They take scissors and they cut it off. They just have these scissors, right? And that's it. And then I didn't know that. I didn't know, because I wake up in the hospital. I didn't know that. I didn't remember that I was wearing this shirt. And then 5 months, 6 months later, I'm starting to wear clothes again. I'm starting to try and walk again. I'm going, whatever happened to that shirt? I used to love that shirt. Whatever happened to it? And my wife goes, Robert, they tore that shirt apart. And I said, really? It's gone? He goes, well, no, they gave it to me in a bag, right? But I thought you're never going to want this again. What a bad memory. And I go, no, I love that shirt. And so my wife happens to be very good with a sewing machine. She can make clothes. She's also a filmmaker, but she sewed it together, and it kind of looks like Frankenstein, because you can see the stitching going across, which is sort of like a fashion statement in itself kind of thing. But because it had the memory of my death in it, it had those cells that were dying connected to my body. It felt like what's called memento mori, a souvenir of my own death. And I was proud to wear it again. I was happy to wear it again. It was like a scar on your face that is healed, and you feel it's a nice feeling. So I still have it and I still wear it. It still has that funny little Frankenstein zipper across it, but it's great because it brings back the impermanence of life to me.
Yeah, it's almost like taking a situation that you could consider negative and turning it into a positive, or a piece of memorabilia to show appreciation for life.
Yeah, very much so.
I'm curious about your relationship with Ryan Holiday, and particularly how he became an apprentice under you. And I know one thing he did that was you were very appreciative of, was him updating your Wikipedia page.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm curious what other signs you
Well,
had. That, yeah,
I'm sorry. No, go ahead. Go
I'm,
ahead.
I'm curious what other I'm curious what other signs he had that you looked at and you said, "Oh, this guy, I want him to spend time with me."
Well, first of all, he was young and energetic, and so he had that kind of youthful quality that I found very interesting and something I don't have anymore. And he was very eager and enthusiastic. Now, a lot of people come to me who have that, and they don't really add up to anything. But I could sense that it was wedded with some intelligence. It wasn't just like sycophancy or idolatry. There was something intelligent behind it. And I think the main thing is, besides the Wikipedia incident, which made it clear to me that we're talking about 2005, 2006. The internet was still very big, but it wasn't like what it is now. And so
Mm.
to be able to fix your Wikipedia page seemed like, wow, magic. Somebody can do that? That's amazing. Nowadays, I don't think that would impress anybody, but back then it impressed me. But the other thing was, he was researching, I believe it was for the 50 Cent book. I had him do some research. I don't remember exactly. He'd recall it better, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted. It wasn't perfect. He was missing the point a little bit, and I kind of criticized him, not in a personal way, but I was telling it rather bluntly. This isn't working for me. This isn't what I need or want, and here's how you have to go about it. You have to think in terms of stories. You have to think in terms of what's dramatic and entertaining, not just it can't just be something that's true or historical, but has to have that larger than life quality. I'm not sure, but I think it was something like that. And a lot of people, when you criticize them, they're like a flower that just wilts in front of your eyes. They get all weak and whiny and, oh, you said that about me. Oh, God. And they want to run away and hide under a rock or something, right? And I get that all the time. He was fine with it. I told him that. He didn't take anything personally. And he went on and he did the next thing was right. He learned from it. He listened and he learned. That's a skill you don't find in very many people. I do a lot of consulting with like people in business, so they come to me with their problems. And I try and give them like really good advice. And I think it's good advice, something that they weren't thinking of. And they don't pay any attention. They don't do what I said because they come to me and they want to hear what they want to hear. They want their ego validated, right? And so that stops them from learning. So by me saying this is a better way to do it, they take it as a personal insult. Oh, Robert is telling me I'm not doing it the right way. And 9 times out of 10, they ignore what I say, even though what I think I'm saying could really help them. And that's what makes people fail in life or creates a wall. They're not willing to learn. They stop learning. So when you're young, if you have that quality, forget it. Life's going to be just miserable for you. But Ryan had the opposite. He was willing to take it and to learn from it and to grow from it. That was sort of the main thing that I got from that early experience and made me want to have this guy work for me.
The ability to take criticism, so
Most
important.
definitely.
You mentioned that you give people advice and it might be for a consulting or something like that. I know you do a fair bit of consulting. And I'm curious how you pick what to work on because you're so focused on writing and writing is the main thing and you have books you want to write. How do you decide what is worth your time to do outside of writing?
Well, unfortunately, and this isn't a nice thing to admit, but I choose people who are interesting to me, whose worlds are going to add like experience for me. So
Mm.
in a perfect world, I would just choose people for the being human beings and for their natural qualities and for their need. But I don't have a lot of time, And so I want, so for instance, if I'm a sports fanatic, right? I love watching sports. I used to love playing sports. Um, so an athlete comes to me, or a coach comes to me, or a trainer comes to me. Yeah, man, I'm there. I'll do it for you because I want access to your world. You know, um, like coaches, they have they deal with things that are it's just unbelievable, right? Dealing with athletes with egos, having to make decisions in the moment. You're like Bill Belichick or whomever. I'm not that I'd give advice to Bill Belichick. I need advice from him. But, you're in the moment. Things are happening. It's very dramatic, intense. You're dealing with all these issues, these problems, these egos. That's strategy on a very high level. And I'm fascinated by that. So an athlete, a coach, somebody involved in sports, you get my attention. I'm not so interested in entertainment, although I loved working with 50 Cent, and he's an amazing person. So somebody like that comes to me, for sure I would do it again with somebody like that. But people who give me access to learning about how to deal with awful situations. So I've also consulted with people, I'm not going to name names or countries, in politics in other countries where they're dealing with very stressful situations. I'm going to learn a lot in trying to help them. So I want to be able to kind of feel some personal growth in this. Unfortunately, that's where I'm at right now.
Well, it seems like you even did that when you were younger in the sense of taking so many different jobs because you wanted to gain experience. And it seems like you valued the experience of life and what was interesting over money. Would you assert that is correct?
Yeah, I mean, I never really made any money until the 48 Laws of Power. But what happened near the end is the end, meaning just before the 48 Laws, I was working in Hollywood and I was doing like researching gigs, etc., and freelancing. And I made pretty good money. I can't complain. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. But what I would do is I would work for 4 or 5 months on that, and then I would take 4 or 5 months off to do writing because I didn't really enjoy it. And if the money was what motivated me, I would have never been able to write the 48 Laws of Power. So I would do that just to have enough money to be able to take time off to write. So that was always kind of what governed me. I mean, at a certain point, I had to make a living, and I was poor, and I was living in this. I was near the beach in Santa Monica. Who could complain about that? But it was a small one-bedroom apartment, and I didn't really have money for travel or extravagant anything like that. At some point, as you get older, that can kind of wear on you, and maybe you want to have some comforts, etc. And unfortunately, that happened with the success of the 48 Laws, which wasn't immediate, but it was more money than I'd ever had in my life. But up to that point, I wasn't like, "God, I got to go to law school. I got to start making money. I got to get those six figures in." I never had that mentality, um, because I wanted to do what I loved, and that was more important than just having food on the table, unfortunately. So yeah, that's kind of what motivated me.
What do you think has contributed most to your longevity as a writer?
Well, the fact that I'm not dead yet has contributed. Gotta attribute it to that. But
But really, your ideas, right, and the
yeah,
books that you've written are more sold today than they were when they came out.
that's for sure. Um, well, the 48 Laws of Power is selling more now than ever, but that is because I tried to make something that was timeless, that wasn't about the late 90s or about Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, but was about Louis XIV, Julius Caesar, and Bill Clinton. So it's like transcends the time period. And so now we're living through a period in 2023 where the power game is worse than ever before. You know, You say one wrong thing on social media, forget it, your life is ruined. You're like dead. You say one wrong thing in the office, oh, you're in deep doo-doo there, my friend, right? The game is so tricky now. It's even worse than when the book came out. Hey, come on, be quiet. That's my cat. Um, so it's even worse now than ever. So because I wrote something that transcends 1998, people are going, wow, this book, it's really what's going on now with social media, with the internet, with AI, with everything. It stayed relevant. But the other thing is, the other books that I wrote, I didn't try and write the 48 Laws of Power Part 2. I moved on and I said, I want to write something that excites me, right? So a lot of people fall in the trap of, this is what worked before. I got to repeat it. I got to do it over again. And it doesn't have the same spirit or the same soul to it. And the reader feels it, and it kind of feels like a sequel that's just kind of done to make money. And it doesn't resonate. Each time I write a book, I go, where am I at right now, Robert? What do you want to write about? You want to write about seduction because it's an exciting subject that interests you? Yeah, okay, let's go with it. You want to write about warfare and people don't like reading about warfare? I don't care. I love strategy. And if they don't read it, I don't, then go, do whatever to themselves. Then I get the 50 Cent book and, it's totally different. I'm not dealing with dead people anymore. I'm dealing with a human being who's alive. That's great. It's exciting. Mastery is completely different from all the other books. The new book I'm writing is completely different. So I take whatever is alive in me at the moment and I try and go as deep as possible into it. You can hear that in the background.
Yeah.
I go as deep as possible into it. And I think that creates, people understand and they respond to it. I think that's sort of why I've been able to survive this long.
Yeah. Following your own curiosities, which begs the question, what are you curious about these days?
Well, I have a book that I'm writing on right now about the sublime. It was the subject of the 18th final chapter of the Laws of Human Nature, and of the final chapter in the book with 50 Cent, the 50th Law, chapter 10 on about death. And because it's a personal experience that happened to me, but I'm not writing about me or about my personal experience, but it's growing out of that. And it's very exciting and very alive to me. And it's, to be honest with you, each day I wake up and I've got all these boring things I have to do. I have to have breakfast. I have to do my physical therapy. Everything takes so long. But when I get down to write my new book, I'm so happy. I'm so excited. It's the best part of the day. All the other things just disappear for me. So when we finish this conversation, that's where I'm going to be at right now. And, so I keep it alive. But I must say one thing, this book has been very difficult to write because a lot of research and I want it to be very impactful for people. I want it to change how they look at the world and make them more excited about being alive. That's not easy. And I'm getting older and I'm slowing down and I can't type and it's arduous. I'm not trying to bitch here, but it is, I've decided that I can't really do many more books like this. I'm going to have to do easier projects from now. So this is sort of maybe the last gargantuan epic type of book that I'm going to try for a while at least, just for health reasons.
Totally understand. Well, we'll be sitting here waiting for it. I'm so looking forward to reading that book. And I'm so grateful for you for powering through and continuing to fight and continuing to do the difficult things. It's a real treasure to talk to you. And I'm really grateful for our time together. I like to end these podcasts with challenges for people. A challenge points to the place in your heart you believe someone could take the information we've spoke about and actually do something with it in their day-to-day life. Does a challenge come to mind?
Well, yeah. The challenge would be to spend 5 minutes every day from this day forward and go deeper into yourself. Now, that sounds very abstract, so let me put some meat on the bones. So, as you're sitting through your day-to-day life, you ask yourself, or in those 5 minutes that I'm giving you, go, why am I thinking about this? Why do I feel this particular way? Why do I want to be a writer or be a lawyer? Why do I love this particular song that I heard on the radio? Why do I like this particular kind of food? Why? Instead of just assuming that you know everything or that you go on your daily life in this kind of cloud of forgetfulness, question yourself. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I here right now? Why am I at this job? Why am I in this relationship? Every day, 5 minutes, maybe after a while it becomes 10 minutes. Then after a while, when you're on the train or the subway or driving, commuting, or in your office, it starts clicking in your brain. The idea is to focus your attention inwardly instead of outwardly. Develop that muscle. That's my challenge for you, so that you get that self-awareness muscle moving. So you start thinking about what you love, what you hate, what makes you different. You stop tuning out the morons on social media telling you what's wonderful because it's not connecting to who you are. You're listening to yourself. Ask yourself these questions. That's my challenge to you, and build on that and do it every day if you can. I think that would create that muscle that I'm talking about.
That's a beautiful challenge. My bio on social media says, look inward to find the truth.
Yeah.
And 5 minutes a day can change your life if you truly do that. Thank you so much for taking the time, Robert.
Oh,
I
thank
really
you,
appreciate
Danny.
you.
I really
Where can we,
appreciate it. Yeah.
where can we send people to connect with you further?
Um, well, I believe that it's still my old ancient website that goes back to the early 2000s. But my assistant might correct me. But for now, it's power, seduction, and war. The and is spelled out.com. Power, seduction, and war.com. If it still exists and I'm still saying what I should be saying, you'll find links there to Instagram, to my YouTube channel, to Twitter. I don't know to TikTok, to all the different platforms that I'm on. Yes, I'm on TikTok, I'm afraid. I mean, nothing against TikTok. It's a wonderful platform. Um, so you'll find links to all of that. And you'll even find an email address where you can write me. Don't expect me to respond, or if I do, it might take a while. But that's the best place to find me at.
And I heard you mention in a different podcast, this is from you. If you want to learn about dating, check out The Art of Seduction, Dealing with Toxic People, 48 Laws of Power, Starting a Business, The 33 Strategies of War, Starting Your Career, check out Mastery, and if you're riddled with fear, The 50th Law. I know there's a couple of others there, but
You left out The Laws of Human Nature.
when you said this at that time, that book had not yet been published.
Okay, all right.
But what would you say to somebody who wants to start reading your work, and why would they start with Laws, the Human Nature book?
Well, unfortunately, it's my longest book, so you have to be patient. It's over 500 pages long. But these aren't books that you read cover to cover. You read chapters that are relevant to you at the time. I mean, you can read it cover to cover, but that's a book that's designed. It's the compendium of all the things I've learned through my over 20 years of writing and dealing with these issues about psychology, about people, about toxic people, about your own power patterns in life. It's going to give you kind of the ultimate Bible or deciphering code for figuring out other people's behavior and why you do the things you do. What is your nature at heart? So it's a very fundamental book that will help you understand people and yourself on a much deeper level. So that's what that book would do.
I love that. Thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, who you are as a person. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to the next one coming very soon.
Oh yeah. It'll be give me a couple of years. Don't hurry me yet, but we'll circle back when the next book is out.
Love that. Thank you so much, Robert.
Thank you, Danny. I
Have a
really
great one.
appreciate it. It was a great interview. I enjoyed it. Thank you.